The great hall of Blackwood keep smelled of damp stone and tension. Rain lashed the high windows as Lord Cedric, his face shadowed by the weight of his own crownless authority, slammed a gauntlet fist onto the oak table. "The decree stands," he growled. "Every third bushel of grain from the southern fields shall be seized for the king's winter stores. Resistance will be met with the gallows." Lady Alara's blood turned to ice. She had watched from the gallery as the council, old men with eyes like flint and hearts like parchment, nodded in silent assent. She had seen the hollow faces of the peasants who'd come begging just that morning, their children already thin as winter branches. This wasn't provisioning, it was starvation dressed as duty. Before reason could leash her tongue, Alara stepped forward, her silk slippers whispering against the cold flagstones. "Father," she said, her voice clear despite the tremor in her hands, "this will break them. They have barely enough to feed themselves. You'll sow rebellion, not loyalty." A hush fell like a shroud. Cedric's eyes narrowed, not with surprise, but with fury. "You dare," he hissed. "You, who have never known hunger, lecture me on governance before my council." "I dare because I see," she retorted, lifting her chin. "Honor isn't measured in bushels stolen from the starving, but in the justice we uphold. Grandfather would never have." Silence. Cedric roared, rising like a storm. "You forget your place, girl. You are not a lord. You are a daughter. And your duty is obedience, not insolence." He turned to the room, his voice regaining its iron control. "This matter is closed." Then, to the guards, "Take her to her chambers. And summon Mistress Agnes." Alara's heart hammered against her ribs as two guards escorted her not gently from the hall. She didn't struggle, pride wouldn't allow it, but her mind raced. She had failed. Worse, she had shamed herself in front of the very men whose minds she'd hoped to change. Mistress Agnes awaited her in the corridor, her face a mask of stoic disapproval. The head maid had served House Blackwood longer than Alara had been alive. Her loyalty was to the house, not necessarily its current lord, and certainly not to wayward daughters. Without a word, Agnes took Alara's arm, her grip firm but not cruel, and led her up the winding stone stairs to the east tower. Alara's chambers were beautiful, a tapestry of hunting hounds on one wall, a feather bed piled with velvet cushions, a window overlooking the inner courtyard. But as Agnes closed the heavy oak door behind them, it felt less like a sanctuary and more like a tomb. "Sit," Agnes commanded, her voice low and final. Alara obeyed, watching as the maid moved with grim efficiency. From Alara's embroidery basket, Agnes removed a small silver stiletto, more ornament than weapon, but sharp enough. She took the sturdy leather boots by the bed, replacing them with soft slippers. Even the quill on the writing desk was confiscated. Then came the bolt thud. The sound echoed through the room as Agnes slid the iron bar across the outside of the door. Alara rushed forward, pressing her ear to the cold wood. "For your own good, my lady," Agnes said from the other side, her voice muffled but clear. "And for the house's. Rest. Reflect. Obedience is your armor now." Footsteps receded. Silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. Alara sank to the floor, tears hot on her cheeks. She pounded the door once, uselessly. Below, she heard the distant clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the bark of orders in the yard. Life went on without her. The very people she'd tried to save would suffer, and she was locked away like a spoiled child. Days bled into one another. Agnes brought bread, water, and thin broth twice a day, exchanging no words beyond necessity. Alara watched from her window. She saw the tax collectors arrive, their carts filling with sacks of grain while women wept silently in doorways. She saw the first smoke rise from a distant croft, a signal, or an accident. Her father's decree was already bearing its bitter fruit. On the third night, a messenger arrived, breathless and mud-spattered. Elara heard the commotion from her window, raised voices, the clatter of hooves. Later, a servant's hushed whisper carried up on the wind, rebellion in Oakham. They burned the granary, killed the reeve. Her father's gamble had failed. Catastrophically. That night, Elara didn't sleep. She paced her cage, her mind sharp as the stiletto Agnes had taken. Direct confrontation had failed. But silence? Observation? Strategy? Those were weapons too. When Agnes came at dawn, Elara was waiting by the door. She didn't plead. She spoke softly, urgently. Agnes, you've served this house through 3 lords. You know its true heart isn't in fear, but in fairness. My father is blinded by pride. If Oakham falls, Blackwood falls with it. I can help, but only if I'm not locked away like a ghost. Agnes's eyes, usually as unreadable as river stones, flickered. She glanced down the empty corridor, then back at Elara. For a heartbeat, the stern mask wavered. The Lord's word is law, she murmured, but her hand lingered on the tray she carried. The law is burning, Elara whispered. And the house with it. Agnes didn't answer. But when she left, the bolt wasn't slid home with its usual finality. It rested loosely in its bracket. An hour later, as shouts erupted from the bailey, reports of rebel scouts nearing the walls, Elara heard the softest click. The door swung inward. Agnes stood there, her face pale but resolute. The postern gate by the stables, she said quickly. The guard changes at noon. You have 10 minutes. She pressed a small, wrapped bundle into Elara's hands, bread, cheese, and the silver stiletto. Go. And may the old gods guide your tongue better than your temper. Elara didn't hesitate. She slipped into the chaos of the keep, a shadow among shadows. She found her father in the armory, strapping on his breastplate, his face grim. Before he could roar her name, she spoke, her voice steady as steel. The rebels aren't led by outlaws, father. It's Master Harrow, the miller whose son you conscripted last spring. He doesn't want war. He wants justice. Let me speak to him. Cedric stared at her, truly seeing her for the first time, not as a disobedient girl, but as a woman who had watched, learned, and understood what he had missed. The weight of his error settled on his shoulders like a shroud that he nodded. By dusk, a truce was forged in the muddy field outside the walls. Elara stood beside her father, not as a prisoner, but as his voice. The grain would be returned. The conscripts were released. And House Blackwood would remember its duty was to its people, not just its pride. Back in her chambers that night, the door stood open. Elara looked out at the quiet courtyard, the first stars pricking the violet sky. The cage was gone. But the work, the real work of building something worthy of the name Blackwood, had only just begun. And this time, she would not be silenced.